We'll get this one kicked off by going back to 1981 when today's game, Kicks, was developed by a husband and wife team, Randy and Sandy Pfeiffer. Randy, or as I like to call him, Rowdy Randy Pfeiffer, went on to focus mainly on sound design for pinball machines. Rowdy Randy and his wife Sandy, or as I in the patent office like to call her, Sandra Pfeiffer. Yeah, just Sandra Pfeiffer. Anyway, together they created an interactive audio telecommunications message storage, forwarding, and retrieval system. So outside of inventing whatever that is and creating today's game, not much else is known about this duo. They left a mark on video gaming with Kicks though, which was wildly successful when it first released and was subsequently ported to all the contemporary platforms of the day. It first released in North American arcades in 1981 and quickly exceeded Taito's expectations. It was unlike any other game at the time. Even in Japan, a more competitive arcade market, Kicks was the 5th highest grossing game of 1981. Sequels would emerge, but none would live up to the legacy the first left behind. Let's check out Kicks on the NES. The concept of Kicks is pretty straightforward and easy to grasp, but to be sure, they provide you with some directions on screen beforehand and even walk you through the different enemies. I appreciate this on-screen tutorial, something many games of this era sorely lacked in favor of having players refer to the manual. Manuals are great and all, but they didn't always come with rentals, and frankly, many of us were, and still are, too lazy to read. In short though, the point of the game is to seal off areas of the screen without being touched by this squiggly menace. The squiggly menace is known as the titular Kicks, described as the virus in the manual. You've probably played games like this, but at the time this concept was pretty novel. You control the sticks, S-T-I-X, and can move it around the outside of the play area. When you're ready to draw some lines to start sealing in the Kicks, you hold down A to move the cursor and draw lines. You have to be quick. Being touched by the Kicks is instant death. Avoid it like the plague. Being an arcade port, the game is predicated on points, and in order to accrue even more points, you press B instead of A to draw your lines, which moves it slower. Sealing off areas in slow mode doubles your points, but is obviously a higher risk. There are numerous strategies here. You can build out trees by continuously claiming small squares while the virus isn't looking, so to speak, and create little nooks and crannies for it to trap itself in. Or you can spiral in around it to try to see if you can seal it off as you go. At first you'll just be dealing with one Kicks, but eventually a second Kicks will join the fray. Here is where you can employ another point-grabbing strategy. If you manage to separate the Kicks and seal them apart, you'll earn less points for that stage, but any bonus points you get in the next stage will be worth double. And that's important, as you not only get points by sealing off the areas using A for normal or B for double points, but you also have a percent of coverage you're trying to achieve each level. At first, you'll need to seal off at least 65% of the play area, indicated by this value here on the right. Any percent you claim over that equals bonus points. So if you do manage to separate the Kicks in one level, any overage you get in the next level will be doubled. However, you can stack this effect, and if you seal off Kicks multiple levels in a row, you can not only double, but can even triple or quadruple those bonus points in following stages. It's not just the Kicks that can kill you though, there are two other menaces plotting your demise and making the game increasingly difficult. The first are the Sparks, S-P-A-R-X. Almost like Bubba Sparks, except with fewer X's and the same old booty after all these years. The Bubba Sparks will circle around the play area and right along the lines you make, so you have to be constantly aware of them. They can't travel along the lines you're in the middle of creating, so sometimes to dodge them you'll have to build away from them, which means risking yourself to the Kicks that's constantly floating about like a dot matrix ghost. The AI of the Kicks demands way more respect than you might think a game from this era deserves. It is a smart and wily virus. The other enemy is the Spritz. These bounce around the screen all Pong-like and give the game a jazzball flavor. If you've ever played games on an old Windows computer in like 1992, you feel me on that. There's no time limit on Kicks, but the longer a stage goes, the more hectic things become. Enemies start moving faster and your panic will inevitably start to rise. There are no breaks. You can't start building a line and wait too long, or a fuse will rapidly move along the line to murder you. The main strategy for this game is, you win in doubt, just be moving. As the game progresses, you'll be required to seal off higher and higher percentages of the play area. Stages eventually become very difficult, and since the whole point is really just to get points, there is no winning condition or end screen. The stages loop after the 8th one though, so running the loop and beating the built-in high score of 100,000 is typically enough for most folks. You have 4 lives and you can earn more for every 50,000 points you accrue. It's an easy game to get the hang of, so you'll see most of what it has to offer within the first hour most likely. You and a pal can play 2-player and take turns seeing who can last the longest and get the highest score, which adds a little more value to the experience. The game's music and sound design is pretty good considering the rather rudimentary presentation the game just naturally has. It doesn't need to be flashier, it's fun the way it is, but it does end up feeling bare after a while. It needed some zest, and the sound design delivers with good sound effects and some decent jingles. This NES version also uses a multitude of patterns for indicating your filled-in areas, which is ultimately just a nice added touch to this otherwise simple presentation. Despite all the simplicity, the game is really fun and can get addictive if you're into setting high scores. It's not my favorite version of the game, however. I find the Game Boy one to be a bit more fun. I'm not sure if it's the screen size or just the different behavior of the kicks between the ports, but NES Kicks is still a fun game to put a little time into. Now today, the cartridge is more rare to find for the system than you might think, and I would not consider it worth its modern-day asking price, but that's true for a good number of NES games these days. All said, I think Kicks is a little underrecognized on the system because it is certainly fun, but also deserves some criticisms for being a little too simplistic and bare bones compared to other games released for the NES by 1991 when this came out. Some other modes for multiplayer, maybe some special challenges, or options for customizing the backgrounds could have added more value. Now the Game Boy version, like I said, still holds up really well. I continue to play it to this day, and that is really the only other version I have played, although I have read that the Atari 5200 port is really good for that system. Maybe one day I'll come across a Kicks arcade machine in the wild, but until then, that is going to do it for Kicks on the NES. Now as always, look out for Bubba Sparks. He could be anywhere. And thanks for watching.